87, California, land of free, where it never rains and the mountains touch the sea. In the summer of love.
I'm George Hagemann, a member of Friends of the Arts Board of Directors. I'm a sculptor by trade, metalworking, stone carving, bronze casting, mostly for myself, but I have sold a couple pieces and I did have one commission that's out in Wayzata. We're here showing the art wall in City Hall. It's a collaboration between the city and a committee that invites local artists to display their art inside of St. Louis Park City Hall. The display changes several times a year. This one is a photography exhibit. This is Chris Erickson, and the title is 31 Days at the Westwood Hills Nature Center. We've also got in the works some vitrines coming in for some 3D work. There's been some painting and other displays have been decided for this year. And come into City Hall on 3rd floor and see what your neighbors are doing.
Hi, my name is Janice Reuland. I'm a visual artist and resident of St. Louis Park. I first became involved in the arts when I was in high school, and I took as many art classes as I could. At the same time, I took as many science classes as I could, and that has developed into a lifetime duality of science and art, and I currently still work in both of those media. I don't have a formal degree in the arts. I went to the University of Minnesota and graduated there with degrees in genetics and plant biology. And then through many odd twists and turns in life events, I ended up working in Mexico. And it was down there and teaching there that I met and worked with a lot of various artists, whether they were performing artists or painters. I found a lot of inspiration in them, and that's what motivated me to begin my own studio practice. So now I have about 12 years working as a mixed media artist out of my own studio. I've lived in St. Louis Park for almost 5 years now, and I have a son at Susan Lindgren Elementary. I first approached St. Louis Park Friends of the Arts in 2017, and I offered to organize free visual arts opportunities for the community. What we came up with was City Art Lab. That involved me going to different city parks with various art materials, so anything from acrylic paint, watercolor, ink, oil pastel, paper collage, and very uncommon painting tools, things like spatulas, forks, wooden dowels, rollers, sponges, things of that nature. We brought those to the city parks so that people could explore the art materials on their own terms and do as much or as little artwork as they wanted to. So we started this whole adventure at the Children's Ice Cream Social last year. Pam Lure had her Pianos on Parade project, so we partnered with her. You might have seen us with various art materials with those pianos, many children kind of contributing their own artwork to that public display, which turned out to be very fun. After that, I did 4 different city parks with all of these art materials. They made many works of art they got to take home, and I was really proud of what people came up with. So this year in 2018, we've organized with Friends of the Arts in St. Louis Park to expand our City Art Lab opportunities. The goal of City Art Lab is to have many artists from our community work with the public and get participants involved in exploring the same materials that the artist uses in their studio. So this year we chose 4 different artists from our community. They each work with very different materials, and they're going to offer a series of workshops over the next year. They are Sheila Sato giving a 4-session workshop on book arts at her own studio, Stacia Goodman, who is a mosaic artist, and she is giving a 2-session workshop at Wolf Park in August. Ricky Keeler is a mixed media artist, and she will be running 3 workshop sessions in July. Each session is at a local park, so you can draw inspiration from nature as you learn to work with various watercolor media. Denise Tenen works in sculpture and natural materials, and the details on her workshop should come out next week. Remember, all the materials are free for these workshops, so we look forward to seeing you there. Registration opened just for a few weeks now, and it's been amazing response from the St. Louis Park community. We also are looking for donations at any time because we are offering this program free to the public. If you are interested in registering for one of these workshops, or if you're interested in making a contribution, please visit Friends of the Arts website at slpfota.org or call directly at 952-928-6422. Thank you, and I'm Janice Reuland, a mixed media visual artist from St. Louis Park, Minnesota.
Stacia Goodman. I am a visual artist. Specifically, I make mosaic art, and I work in glass, in ceramic tile. I started out making very small mosaics, and over the years, as my confidence grew, I started making bigger and bigger and bigger mosaics, moving toward doing more larger public art installations. I think of myself as sort of the poster child for self-taught artists. I did not take an art class until my senior year in high school, and I think when I was in college I took one because it was a prerequisite. I've always been creative my whole life. I always thought I was just a little bit strange because as a kid I always had my nose to the ground. I was always looking for interesting rocks. I remember I had a big collection of keys, like old cast-off house keys and car keys that I thought was just the coolest thing. And I was always creating stuff out of this stuff that I would find. I was constructing elaborate castles and houses from rocks and sticks and stuff from the garden. From a really early age, I was expressing myself very tactically using my hands. I knew as I got older that I really needed to continue doing that, so I started experimenting by just taking some local art classes. I took some pottery classes, jewelry making, metal smithing, collage art, and one day, maybe 15, 16 years ago, I walked in to take my first mosaic art class. I knew that I had found something that was really big and something that I really needed to pursue. I can arrange things with my hands really well, and I'm very drawn to patterns and color gradations and shapes, and so it gave me a way to express myself with my hands, which is also very welcoming because my day job is being a freelance marketing communications writer. So I spend a lot of time in my head arranging words, and making mosaic art lets me arrange pieces of things to tell a story without having to tune into that word part of my brain. So I am extremely honored to be the recipient of not one, but two St. Louis Park Arts and Culture grants. So I received my first grant in 2010, and I proposed creating a very large mosaic in the atrium of the St. Louis Park Rec Center. I kind of snooped around St. Louis Park, and I felt like the rec center would be a great place. It has this big sunny atrium where we're standing today that was just begging for a big piece of art. And because I raised my family in this neighborhood, we have spent many, many years at the rec center. I really had a sense of the people who use the center and how they use it, and so I wanted to create a piece of art that I felt like was representational of the different people and the different communities of all ages and backgrounds who come together in this one central spot, get to know each other, and their lives overlap. And so that's what that initial piece was representative of. And then I applied for another grant 5 years later and received that grant in 2016 to create the newest piece of art that's in the rec center. So the old piece got taken down and we decided to do a refresh. That's the piece that hangs there today, and that one incorporates a lot of found objects, specifically that I found in the St. Louis Park Rec Center's Lost and Found box. I love when people interact with my pieces. It's one of my favorite things about mosaics is their durability. And I've noticed on this mosaic, I found this hockey mask in the Rec Center's Lost and Found, and I've noticed that it's become a little bit of a game that a couple of people have used bouncy balls, probably seeing if they can ricochet them off the floor and get them to land in the mask themselves. And some artists might be really upset that someone has quote unquote altered their work. For me, that is like the biggest thrill, because I'm a very big believer in art should be accessible, touchable, friendly. It should not be elitist in any sort of way. First and foremost, it should just be really engaging with the public. So I am thrilled to see that. When I was thinking about creating this piece, I came and I stood in the space. There was a mom standing here with a little boy who was about maybe 5 years old. And I said, well, what would you like to be in the new piece of art? And he said, a car, a Hot Wheel car. So I said, you got it. If you look up on the end, you can see a blue Hot Wheel car, and that's specifically for my little friend who I made that day. I really credit my first arts and culture grant from St. Louis Park to helping me further launch my career as an artist. It's very difficult when you're self-taught and you sort of don't know the avenues and you don't have the connections to really build a portfolio. So I was able to use that piece as an example of the type of work I do, and I feel like it was directly one of the reasons why I received a very large project from the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport in 2015, and I installed in 2016. There are 2 large murals in the Humphrey Terminal where they added on additional gates, and my mosaics appear around gates H12, H13. You can see them from the concourse. Well, they are both scenes of the Minnesota Northern Lights. One is a scene from the summer, and that one is 9 feet high by 13 feet wide, and the other one is Northern Lights in the winter, and it actually has a dog, sled, and musher going through the scene itself at night with the sun reflecting on the snow, and that one is 9 feet high by 16 feet wide. So those are probably my most visible pieces today, but I also have a large work in Calhoun Square in the Uptown neighborhood, another large work in the lobby of 1300 building in Uptown, pieces in hospitals, schools, and some government buildings. For anyone who's interested, you can see photos of all of that work on my website. And you're more than welcome to like or follow my Facebook page. It's Stacia Goodman Mosaics, and I frequently post there with project updates of things that I'm working on and how I sort of view the world through my mosaic artist's eyes. For example, I went to Hawaii in January, and I came back with a whole bunch of fabulous photos of patterns that just appear naturally in the leaves within a botanical garden on the Big Island. Over the years, I've had a number of people ask me if I ever teach mosaics, and I've always said no, and I direct them to some of my fabulous mosaic artist friends who do teach, and they are very good at it. I decided that St. Louis Park has been so influential in my art career that I really wanted to give something more back to the community. And so for the first time ever, I will be teaching this summer in St. Louis Park as part of the City Arts Lab program, and I will be teaching a class in August on a new form of mosaics that I'm making that I feel like is very friendly and doesn't require as much technical skill, and it's using actually upcycling pieces of wood and maybe some tiling to it as well, and making some abstract designs. So if you're familiar with the work of George Morrison, one of my idols, artist who spent a fair amount of time creating what I think of as mosaics in wood using driftwood from around the country. That's been the inspiration behind this new body of work. I will also be posting more information, and have already done so, on my Facebook. I'm just really excited to share my skills with people and see what we can create together.
Park Theater, St. Louis Park's community theater. We are the producers of the show that you're currently watching, Arts in the Park Video Magazine, which is broadcast on Park Cable TV Channel 15 and also on our YouTube channel, Arts in the Park, one word, Video Magazine. In the summer, Phil Hall, a St. Louis Park playwright, approached the Park Theater Company about producing his original play, The President and the Space Lady. Phil had originally written the play in 2011, but due to unforeseen circumstances was unable to launch it at that time. This play is a zany romp which takes place on Christmas Eve in the Oval Office. It's written in the burlesque style of a TV sitcom, filled with slapstick humor, double entendre, and fast-paced comedic dialogue. A perfect holiday treat for a theater audience at Christmas time, with the message of peace on earth, goodwill to men, and women too. Justin David Cervantes was invited to be the director of this production. Justin had recently directed Happy Days, the musical, at the Lakeshore Players Theater in White Bear Lake. He brought experience, enthusiasm, and a passion for comedy, having a keen ear for the timing that is involved in a comedy such as The President and the Space Lady. A talented cast was recruited through auditions and rehearsals, which took place in November. The cast included David Holmes as E.T. Fuzzy Roswell, who serves as vice president, but due to an emergency has ascended to the presidency. Al Finney is General Clark Mensa, chief of staff. Claire Avery as Holly Dolly Madison Killjoy is the Speaker of the House and an ex-wife to Vice President Roswell. Jennifer Keown is Captain Marcia Meeker, security technology expert, and Rachel Clarice Perry is Space Cadet Klutz, an alien from another universe who crash lands in the Rose Garden. A fast-paced rehearsal schedule was conducted through November and early December of 2017 at the Sabes JCC Theater, which was the venue for the performance. With the help of Tim Colby as artistic director and construction manager, things quickly took shape, with a reproduction of the Oval Office in disrepair, but clearly the office of the President of the United States of America. Eric Voigt, a St. Louis Park resident, served as stage manager and lighting and sound technician. A special thanks needs to be given to Todd Bruce, Sabes JCC theater manager, who not only made this production possible in that venue, but several of the Park Theater Company's productions since 2013. His passion and support for theater is outstanding, and without his help, we really wouldn't be able to launch productions we have. 3 performances of President and the Space Lady were performed at the Sabes JCC on December 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of 2017. A good time was had by all. The Park Theater Company over the past 10 years has entertained over 3,500 enthusiastic theater patrons. Thank you so much for watching and let us know how much you enjoy the show.
Will and maintain peace. Notice how I said must exchange salutes.
So, you expect me to,
Oh, there, you just did it. Good enough for me.
Crazy as a loon. Beaker's got a video of him sticking a popsicle in his ear. Yes, sir, I said a popsicle. White House is shut down. Starting tomorrow, there will be a big bug tent over the building to launch Project Termite. From then on, nobody goes in or out until the new administration takes over in a couple of weeks. No. So, excuse me, sir. Captain, explain yourself.
Yes, sir, of course, sir, right away, sir.
I'm waiting.
Explain what, exactly?
Did you tell the Vice President about the Rose Garden incident?
I didn't see a reason why not to, sir. After all, you did tell me to humor him.
When I said humor him, I didn't mean tell him anything.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that I
Don't think, Meeker. You're a soldier. You obey. You don't think. For God's sake, show some brains and don't think.
No, sir, won't do any more thinking.
Good. See to it. Now, as I was saying, sir.
just a moment, General. By any chance, is there an ice bag in there?
Not exactly, but there is a popsicle.
Well, that's ice on a stick. Not quite an ice bag, but if it's all we got, maybe it'll work. I'll give it a shot. Yeah, headaches, earaches disappearing, head's getting numb. Good thinking, Meeker.
Sir, what are you doing?
I got an earache. Fortunately, Meeker got this to fix it.
Popsicle fixes an earache? Captain, is this your idea?
No, sir. He wanted ice to make his head numb, but the popsicle's the only ice around.
Keep it nearby, Captain. I want it ready at a moment's notice.
Wake up, wake up.
Hi, Mommy. It's Clarky. Bad news. I can't make it home for Christmas this year. I know I promised, but there's no way. No, because there's a world crisis. That's why. I know there's a world crisis every day, but this one's a little different. This is, kind of out of this world. No, I can't tell you. No, Mommy, I can't. Oh, don't cry, Mommy. Okay, if you must know, the space station has gone missing. That's why I can't make it home for Christmas, because the space station has disappeared.
I gotta go. No, it's not an excuse. I really gotta go. Bye.
What's that?
Tech support.
Here it is, the last part of my EDSOL. A suicide bomb option the general wanted in case evildoers take over. But I don't know if it works because the general told me never ever to test it.
General, why wouldn't you let her test it?
Because to properly test it would require blowing up the White House. We'd have trouble explaining that.
Just say it's the ultimate solution to Project Termite.
Oh, I like that.
Warning signal, sunrise is approaching. Where's my blast off button? Here. I'm gonna push it myself. Make sure I get along all right myself. For the final time, goodbye, and I salute you. I salute you.
This nose thumbing is getting contagious. First he starts doing it, then now she's doing it. Go see if Freudenstein's here yet.
Yes, sir.
Finally, the crash landing's complete. The departure checklist is complete, and I'm out of here. Fonzie, come quick. She's leaving. You can wave goodbye.
Wait, just to be safe, I better give her one last.
I'll try, sir, but ever since you arrived here, it's been more like Halloween than Christmas. Goodbye, sir.
So, sun's up, the rain stopped, and it's a perfect Christmas morning. Got any plans?
I'd like nothing more than to finish my dream of peace on Earth. Care to finish the dream with me?
That depends. Doesn't it by any chance involve me cuddling up with a ton of pistachios?
You know, the nice thing about a dream is it includes everything that you can imagine. And we both have pretty vivid imaginations.
Then let's dream on. I love you, Mr. President.
And I love you, Space Lady.
name is Phil Hall, and I'm a homeowner here in St. Louis Park to talk and tell you a little bit about some of the history I've had in theater, both here in St. Louis Park and professionally in other parts of the country. I first became interested in theater when I was a little boy, when my grandmother, whose name is Elizabeth Kerr, and for those of you that don't recognize the name Elizabeth Kerr, she co-starred on Mork and Mindy with Robyn Williams and Pam Dauber. She played Mindy's grandmother for the run of the show, although she didn't stay with the show the entire period. Anyway, she came to Los Angeles when I was a little boy. I was 10 years old and appeared in a musical called Redhead. It was a Bob Fosse musical, and it starred his wife, Gwen Verdon, who at the time had become famous for Damn Yankee. And they came out to California, and my parents made me go see the show, which I did, and I was just mesmerized by everything that happened, and the fact that my grandmother was all a part of it was just the most wonderful thing in the world to me. That night I got to sit backstage with my grandmother and watch a show from the wings, and the next day she took me back home and delivered me to my parents, and by the end of that afternoon she'd called an acting teacher, and I started acting the very next week. At 10 years old, I was being instructed by this old English vaudevillian who was doing a melodrama in Van Nuys. It was an old musical called The Drunkard, and The Drunkard at the time was a big temperance play. It ran for years and years and years in downtown Los Angeles, and this old vaudevillian had put together sort of a musical version of the show, and he did it on Van Nuys Boulevard, just down the street from the Big Boy restaurant on Van Nuys Boulevard that has been seen in so many movies at the time, such as American Graffiti. And every week I went to my acting lesson, and I had to take a check. I remember it cost my parents $15 for me to go and get instructed by this guy. And I started acting, and I've been acting ever since. At one point, I got hired as an apprentice at a theater called Valley Music Theater. It was a professional theater. It was run by Art Linkletter and Nick Mayo and Randolph Hale, were the three big producers. I first arrived in the Twin Cities back in 1972 when I was on the road with a children's theater called the Robin Hood Players. They were a professional children's theater company out of Chicago. And I'd been going to Northwestern as a theater major, where among other people in my class was Shelley Long and an actor by the name of Peter Strauss, who went on to do many other things. And anyway, one day there I saw in the lounge an offer to go on the road with a children's theater, and it paid, and it toured the country, and for better or worse, I dropped out of Northwestern and went on the road with this children's theater. And among the places that we happened to come to was Minneapolis. I got involved in theater back then. I started working at Dudley Riggs. He was starting a new company called the Experimental Theater Company. And back in the 70s, Dudley started this new theater group, and we did different types of plays. It was more experimental theater than it was improv. But among the shows we did was one called Point of Order, which was an actual recreation of the McCarthy hearings, which had taken place back in the 50s. It was basically a witch hunt looking for people who had communist leanings or who had indications that they were sympathetic to communists. And it didn't take much to get you in trouble. A little whisper by somebody or somebody that didn't want you to have a job, they could ruin your reputation just by saying something to the government that so-and-so was accused of being a communist. And among the people that I played was an actor by the name of Jack Guilford, who at the time was kind of a milquetoast sort of guy, and me being as small as I am, I got the part, and when I read his testimony and realized what this guy had done in the face of these awful, awful hearings that could ruin your reputation like that or put you on a blacklist so that you could never work again, he really stood up to them. And when they accused him of being a communist, he accused him of being on a witch hunt, and it really impacted me for the rest of my life. Anyway, we left Minnesota. I did back then, back in the 70s, and went out to California and tried to get into show business, you know, through my grandmother's access on Mork and Mindy, and met my wife, Roberta Ann Schwarz. We've been married 28 years now. Got married in Edinburgh, Scotland, of all things. Anyway, at one point, we looked around Los Angeles, didn't want to live there anymore. I'd gotten into flying, and we actually owned an airplane, so my wife and I put our stuff together, got into the airplane, flew back to Minneapolis, and a couple years later we were fortunate enough to buy this house here in St. Louis Park and happened to see an audition for a play. It was at Theater in the Round, and I went back there, and after 25 years I got back into acting, and I am so glad I did, because it's led me into so many interesting things in my life. It brought me to where I am today, really. I've been writing plays all along, and I've done a number of plays up here and played some really, really fun parts. I even got to be an announcer for the Timberwolves for a while, a guy by the name of Don Overbeck, who was a fictional announcer, and like so many things, he came and went. But playwriting-wise, and this is really what I want to talk about, is the St. Louis Park Community Theater. It's a small little theater here based in St. Louis Park. Jim McDonough is the chairman of the board of the place. And one day it occurred to me that I had some plays and I needed a place to put them on. And I talked to Jim about it, and we ended up doing a play that I wrote originally called The President and the Space Lady that was an awful lot of fun. So one of the things that I hope everybody gets about this, support your local community theater. Come and see these things. They're fun, they're interesting, and essentially they're inexpensive. Plus, in a lot of these cases, the parking is free. We got good actors here in St. Louis Park. I like to think I'm one of them, and come and see these shows. Support the St. Louis Park Community Theater. The Park Theater Company is what it's known as, www.parktheatercompany.com. Among other commercials I did, I was in a commercial for the Minnesota State Lottery, and the premise was that a football bus full of fans was on its way to the game. And I was driving the bus, and the bus had broken down.
There'll be no football today.
And it looked like we weren't going to make it for the big game.
Of course it's Phil's fault.
And lo and behold, I'm scratching a lottery ticket.
Did he put gas? He put gas?
And I turn into John Randall, the local football legend, and John Randall pulls the bus to the game.
We're going to the game! Yeah!
And everybody's happy. So that was just one of the parts that I've done in commercials. I played a football coach in another commercial for Treasure Island.
This is it! The big game! These guys are huge and mean! They're behemoths! We've got to match their intensity and aggression! So let's get after them! Let's get mean! Let's hear your growl! Ah!
Hey, Coach.
But among other things, I did a movie called Kumiko the Treasure Hunter, which was shown here at the St. Louis Park Film Festival. It was directed by the Zellner brothers and shot partially in Japan and partially here in Minnesota. And that was kind of an interesting day because I shot it, I think, the last day of January, my scene. I play a deaf and dumb cab driver who's the last one to see the character alive. And the temperature was every bit as cold as it looked in the movie. And it was a whole day sitting outside, so it was interesting. When they say sometimes that movie making is a lot of fun, well, you do have to be out in the conditions, and it was an experience, I can tell you that. Well, Kumiko was based on the movie Fargo. The theory was that there was a Japanese tourist who was found dead in the snow, here in Minnesota, and the legend was that she had been searching for the money that the Steve Buscemi character in Fargo had buried there by the road, and she had died trying to find this. And the movie is a fictional recounting, the movie Kumiko is a fictional recounting of this girl's journey from an office girl in Japan to essentially somebody who's hunting for a treasure. She calls herself a treasure hunter in the movie, and that's what the movie is really about.
For the past several years, Westwood Lutheran Church on Cedar Lake Road in St. Louis Park has served as the event venue for the Empty Bowls fundraiser. This is a fundraiser for the St. Louis Park Emergency Program, commonly known as STEP. The event serves hot soup and bread in empty bowls as a sign of support for people in need in our community. But along with the tasty food, there is also an entertainment schedule, and many young talents in our community and new groups find this as one of their entrees to the artistic performing scene.
We're very excited that they are performing at Empty Bowls again this year, so please welcome them as soon as I open the curtains.
Hi, y'all. We are the Meadowbrook Gospel Choir, and I know we were introduced, but we'd just like to say thank you first of all, to Aldersgate Methodist Church, who lets us rehearse there every Wednesday night. Of course, we have a big thanks to our startup grant providers, which was the St. Louis Park Friends of the Arts. And we're so glad to be here at the Empty Bowls fundraiser for STEP. I know through Meadowbrook Collaborative, we've worked very closely with Meadowbrook Collaborative, and we're just so happy to be here. We're always looking for new members to the gospel choir, so if you love to sing and you find that your spirit gets moved by gospel music, we'd love to have you join us. You can contact me. I'm going to put some posters up and about, and my contact information is on there. But we hope you enjoy us. We sure like singing.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, yes, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Got to let it. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Won't let anybody blow it out. No, I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let anybody blow it up. No, I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let anybody blow it up. No, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Shine my light across the land. Yes, I'm gonna let it shine. Shine my light across the land. I'm gonna let it shine. Shine my light across the land. Yes, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let your light shine, oh, let it shine. Let it shine. Let your light shine, oh, let it shine. Let it shine. Let your light shine, oh, let it shine. Let your little light shine. Let it shine.
I'm Robyn, Awend, the Twin Cities Jewish Cultural Arts Director for the Sabes and St. Paul JCCs. I began working at the Sabes JCC about 11 years ago in the arts, and most recently my position is now expanded to the St. Paul JCC, overseeing both organizations in the arts. I've always been interested in the arts, even as a young child. My earliest memories are creating work using any material I could possibly find, and knowing that art would always be a part of my life. When I went to college, I went to the University of Arizona and studied printmaking, and then went to graduate school at the University of Dallas, where I got my Master's of Fine Arts in printmaking and also curatorial studies, which opened up a whole new world for me, not only learning about art, but also learning how to display art for others. And that became a really exciting process for me, which then led me to my work here at the JCCs, especially at the Sabes JCC, where we have this beautiful exhibition space that's dedicated just to the arts. I was able to take what I had learned in graduate school and apply it to the space, working with amazing artists in the community. It became a collaborative effort between my role and their role, and then we were able to offer the community this experience of viewing art in its many forms, dealing with really important topics and learning about new artistic media, and really becoming a place for the community to gather and to be inspired through the arts, having important conversations and shared moments and special opportunities to gather and to let the art be the common ground. When I moved back to the Twin Cities after graduate school, I immediately got connected to the Sabes JCC. I wanted to fuse my passion for the arts and Judaism, and this was one place that I could do that. Fast forward 11 years, and I am still here doing really important work with the community. I also have the unique opportunity for my position to have been expanded to the St. Paul JCC, and am now working over there as well to bring arts and community together through the shared passion of exploring Jewish identity. In addition to the exhibitions that we do throughout the year in the variety of exhibition spaces that we have, one of the really exciting projects that we've been engaged with now in its 6th year is the Jewish Artist Laboratory. And that is a really exciting year-long opportunity for artists to study and create work together, and then have a final exhibition and presentation on whatever that year's topic was. This is something that has become really impactful for artists, and we engage between 30 and 40 artists each year. It becomes a really special group of artists that have this great experience together. And from that, they do other great work together, whether it's showing in other exhibitions or traveling together or exploring different elements of the artistic process together. So that has been one of my most favorite projects I've been working on lately. The Sabes JCC has a variety of exhibition spaces. We have the gallery that we're currently in right now, and we have our shared walls exhibition spaces that are more in our public areas that offer a lot of exposure for artists. We also have art throughout the building. We have a permanent collection that's on display in our upper level. We have mosaic tiles that have been placed within the building. Wherever you are in the building, you will encounter art in some fashion. And at the St. Paul JCC, they have a brand new exhibition space opening up in May, in addition to their existing space, the gallery walk. So that'll be an opportunity for the community to also experience art and for artists to show their work. We have 2 current exhibitions on display right now. One is Immigration and the Other, featuring work by Pamela Gard, Steve Ozone, and Susan Weinberg, each artist dealing with immigration in their own way. As an extension of our immigration exhibition in the gallery is this exciting hallway community installation called For the Record by Pamela Gard, where she has created individual paintings on actual records and CDs, which invites the community to answer the question, who are you? And there is an opportunity for artists in the gallery to create their own record and then hang it down the hallway for others to view. So here we are in the creation station in the gallery, where it's prompting people to create a record and create their own art piece that answers the question, who do you think you are? We are here thinking about immigration, thinking about people's stories, and it always comes back to, how does this apply to us, to me? Everybody gets a chance to create their own record that we will then hang in the hallway as part of the community installation. And in our shared walls exhibition space, we have work by local costume designer Sonia Berlowitz. It features some of her costume work and 2-dimensional sketches and collages. Some of the other things we're doing in the arts that are very exciting, we have our Twin Cities Jewish Film Festival, we have our Twin Cities Jewish Humor Festival, we have ongoing classes and programs and art opportunities for the community. We have multiple ways to engage with the arts, and it's always a great opportunity to come and to be inspired and to build community, to learn something new, and to be a part of whatever is happening. The best way for people to check out what we're up to and to become part of what we're doing is to visit the two JCC websites, www.sabesjcc.org and www.stpauljcc.org. We hope to see you soon.
Where to find out about arts in your neighborhood? Try the St. Louis Park Art Scene page of the Sun Sailor, the Arts Entertainment Calendar. Then again, there's the St. Louis Park Friends of the Arts Art Talk newsletter and their art calendar. The City of St. Louis Park website, the Hennepin County Library Art on Exhibit, and the Directory of Public Art displayed in Hennepin County, and the Edina Art Center, the Minnetonka Center for the Arts, and the Hopkins Center for the Arts.
I'm writing to thank you for the summer of '67.